This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Rameca Vincent Leary and welcome to this edition of inStudio. It is a privilege every U.S. citizen has, the right to vote. Sadly, over time, there were obstacles that prevented some from participating. In this edition of inStudio, we'll explore the history of voting in America from its early beginnings to the present. Plus, with the start of a new year, we'll hear what we can anticipate in 2018 from Supervisor of Elections officials in Okaloosa, Escambia, and Santa Rosa counties. So get ready for an exciting show that will educate us, even more so, about getting out the vote. It's all coming up right after this. Welcome back, everyone. During this edition of inStudio, we'll explore the voting process in America and how it has impacted our society over time. I'm happy to introduce Dr. Doug Mock, professor of political science and history at Pensacola State College. He's joined by two of his wonderful students, Lauren Hayes and Richard Tucker. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm excited to have all of you on the show. Now, Professor Mock, I want you to dive in and tell us what our starting point is going to be.
Well, the starting point, the best starting point, is the Constitutional Convention of 1787. And at the time, the Constitution itself said very little about voting rights in America. There are a couple of constitutional provisions, but by and large, it was a matter of state law. So not only did you vote for fewer offices during the Constitutional Convention, and in the immediate aftermath, we didn't elect our senators back then. They were appointed by state legislatures.
Interesting.
There was no popular vote for the president. That doesn't happen until the 19th century. And by and large, states were very restrictive as to who could vote. Generally, this is not so in every state, but generally you had to be male. Generally you had to be Caucasian. And generally you had to be a substantial property owner in most states. So even though we were created as a constitutional democracy, very few people were making the decisions as far as voting were concerned, very small percentage of the population.
Now, you mentioned that there were a few exceptions. Tell us about some of those exceptions.
Well, in some of the northern states, actually, you could have freed African Americans that were actually eligible to vote. That was the exception rather than the rule. The exceptions are very narrow back then. And as I say, it was a matter of state law. So I think one of the misconceptions that people have is that the United States government and the drafters of the Constitution had this voting scheme laid out, and they didn't. They left it up to the individual states. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. Now, Lauren and Richard, I know having this awesome man as your professor probably gives you chills, right? Absolutely. Goosebumps. Absolutely. Such a wonderful man. Now, as students, and Richard, let me start with you. Did you know much about the history of voting or history in general before you had Professor Mock?
You know, I had a background in it. I did enjoy reading American history, specifically American political history. But really, attending class that Dr. Mock taught was really just life-changing, and it really inspired me to want to pursue this as my major.
So which history courses have you taken with Professor Mock?
I've actually not taken history courses with Dr. Mock. I've done his American Political Science class and his International Relations class, and both have really broadened my view of not only American politics, but politics on the world scale and how other nations interact with each other based on their political infrastructure.
Now, Lauren, I know that you are a dual enrollment student. Tell me about the courses that you have taken with the professor.
Well, I've actually just taken American National Government with him last, fall. And it just is the very broad overview of American national government from Christopher Columbus all the way up to present times, and I really enjoyed it.
These are things everyone should know. We'll talk about your voting histories in just a bit. Professor, let's get back to you. Let's continue the story from a historical standpoint.
Okay. Well, as I say, you had a very limited number of voting opportunities for most Americans in the early years. You didn't even count, if you're talking about the presidential election, the popular vote until 1824. If you look back in the history books, you won't see a popular vote tally because there was no such thing. There was no such thing as a popular vote for U.S. senators until the 17th Amendment, which is finally ratified in 1913. So you have very limited popular participation as far as the federal government is concerned. There's different rules, obviously, when it comes to the state and local governments, but as far as the federal government is concerned, maybe 10% of the population participated in selecting one office, and that was your district's House member of the House of Representatives. And that was it. 1824, then most states started to move towards a popular vote in choosing their electors for the presidency. Prior to that time, the Electoral College was not the sort of pro forma thing that it has become. Electors actually exercised independent judgment in selecting a president. So you didn't completely remove the process from popular opinion because state legislatures were responsible for choosing the manner in which electors were chosen. So say if you were a Federalist or if you were of a Federalist inclination and you wanted a Federalist president, the way you made that happen was not to vote for a presidential candidate, but to vote for a Federalist state legislature in your state, who in turn would then choose a Federalist. So it was a very indirect system. That was true up until the Civil War.
Fascinating information. Let's talk about the Civil War because that impacted quite a bit from a voting perspective.
Right. Well, that changed the way we governed ourselves as a nation in several fundamental ways. Prior to that time, we were more of a confederation, more of a federation. So, you would refer to the United States in the plural. The United States are, rather than the United States is. Most of the governing was done at the state level, including, as I mentioned, voting. That changes, along with a lot of other things, in the aftermath of the Civil War. And you have the three post-Civil War amendments, 13, 14, and 15, that directly alter the way we vote and the way we choose how we're governed.
Would you like to highlight any of those, maybe the 14th, possibly?
Yeah, the 14th is the most important constitutional amendment out there, bar none, because I mentioned a moment ago, it's the Civil War that really completed our transition from being a confederation into more of a unified nation. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the original Constitution, with very limited exceptions, bound only the federal government. So the states, for the most part, could do whatever they wanted, including with respect to voting rights. That starts to change with the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868, because by its terms, the states from that time forward had to provide equal protection to its citizens and due process to its citizens. And that, of course, impacts voting going forward.
Fascinating to hear about the 15th Amendment. We know that voter intimidation existed, right? So can you expand on that?
Right. Well, one of the goals of the 14th Amendment was to eliminate the sort of discrimination in voting laws that you continue to see for 100 years. It didn't work. The southern states decided, we have to provide equal protection of the laws, but we can still have laws that don't discriminate on their face, even if they discriminate in effect. So the states ratified in 1870 the 15th Amendment, which made it an explicit federal constitutional guarantee that states couldn't discriminate in voting based on race or previous condition of servitude. And they also, interestingly, we'll probably get to this later, at least I hope we do.
We will. I'm sure we will.
They provided in the 15th Amendment that Congress would have the power to effect the 15th Amendment by appropriate legislation. It took Congress almost 100 years to do that, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. As a result, in the aftermath of the Civil War, once federal troops were withdrawn from the South in 1876, Southern states could no longer say, we won't allow the freed slaves to vote, we won't allow African Americans to vote, but they came up with a series of what are known as Jim Crow laws that effectively prevented the overwhelming majority of African Americans from voting.
Even some of the newspaper clippings from that time, voter intimidation, the things that people, for example, African Americans, were told they had to do in order to vote.
There were legal problems. There were also cultural and social pressures that kept it from happening. As long as the federal troops were in the South, which they were in the aftermath of the Civil War up until 1876, it may surprise some of your viewers that the first African American member of the Senate was actually a Republican from Mississippi. It was Hiram Revels back in the aftermath of the Civil War. Once those federal troops were withdrawn, then voting in the South was an entirely different matter, obviously.
Richard, hearing this, we live in the 21st century, voter intimidation, and then we hear stories about people that don't vote. What thoughts go through your mind when you think about what happened back then?
Well, I do think that it's a great responsibility and gift to be able to vote the way that we can so easily access the polls like we can today. And I think it's part of our duty as an American to not only vote, but to be informed about our candidates and to have an understanding of the electoral process.
Now, Lauren, I know that you have not voted yet, and we'll talk a little bit about voting in your perspective, right, a little bit later. But seriously, hearing these accounts of voter intimidation over the decades and knowing about people who died for this right, how does that make you feel personally?
Just hearing about how much everybody had to go through to get to this point where we are today makes it even more special to me when I think about all of this, to be able to have the opportunity to vote very soon.
So for anyone who's a little younger out there watching, who is not particularly of voting age right now, listening to what you have to say, I hope stirs them. And maybe it will prepare them, right, for that time. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Professor, I must tell you, what you have imparted in these two students to me is, I think it's monumental. And for all of your students, for that matter. And I've gotten goosebumps just hearing some of the things that you have said. Yeah. And I know that pretty soon after the break, we're going to talk even more so about the process throughout the centuries, throughout the decades. So we're really looking forward to that in just a little while. Folks, don't touch that dial, okay? We'll be back right after this. During this segment, we're continuing our discussion about the history of voting in America. We'll also expand the conversation by exploring technological advancements that have been integrated over the decades. I'm happy to welcome back Dr. Doug Mock, Professor of Political Science and History at Pensacola State College, including his bright students, Lauren Hayes and Richard Tucker. All right, let's continue on with this conversation around the Civil War, right?
Okay. Well, and
around that era, and then the aftermath.
Yeah, we had talked about the 15th Amendment, and so constitutionally a state can't have a law saying, well, only certain classes of citizens can vote. but a lot of the southern states decided, well, we can have things like poll taxes or literacy tests or property qualifications. Those sorts of laws weren't prohibited on the face of the 15th Amendment. Well, you know, in the aftermath of the Civil War, who couldn't read? Well, the freed slaves. It had been illegal to teach them to read, and who didn't own a lot of property. Well, again, the answer to that is obvious. So you had a very, very low percentage of voter participation in the African American community. And of course, up until the second decade of the 20th century, women didn't have any federal constitutional guarantee whatsoever. It took until, you know, the First World War for that to happen.
Let's talk about women's suffrage.
Well, you started to get a strong movement in the aftermath of the 15th Amendment. Because, you know, women felt like they had kind of gotten a raw deal there. You know, the African American community had a federal constitutional guarantee. They did not, and that had to wait until the 19th Amendment. And had it not been for the First World War, it probably would have waited a lot longer. The impetus for passing the 19th Amendment, or for ratifying the 19th Amendment in 1919, was when President Wilson changed a previously held position. He had once opposed the 19th Amendment. It was when most of America's young men were overseas fighting, and women, for the first time in American history, in large numbers entered the workforce, that it occurred to him that it was unfair. So he endorsed the 19th Amendment, and when he did, that was ratified in 1919. Now, there were women, mostly in the western states, that could vote before 1919.
Okay.
That was the exception rather than the rule, but after 1919, 1920, of course, it became a federal constitutional guarantee. You couldn't discriminate based on sex either.
And we see a lot of clippings of women marching in the streets. How were the protests back then? Were they expansive?
Oh, they were. Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you're talking about over 50% of the population that had no federal constitutional guarantee, no federal protection, and so for decades, of course, there were really, it goes back to 1848, the Seneca Falls Convention with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. They were advocating it as far back as then. So, you know, when we go to the 26th Amendment during the Vietnam War, which guaranteed 18-year-olds the right to vote, that passed like that. The 19th Amendment, you're looking at like 3/4 of a century of protests before. I don't know what took so long, but that's just the history of the matter. It did.
Let's talk about the civil rights movement and some of the Jim Crow laws.
Yeah, I think surprises a lot of my students that this is an ancient history. You know, you had these types of laws well into the 1960s, I mean, within my lifetime, you know, well into the 20th century, the second half of the 20th century. And it took until 1965, this is nearly a full century after the 15th Amendment is ratified, that the Congress, the U.S. Congress, finally availed itself of the authority that it was given under the 15th Amendment to pass legislation to affect the guarantees of the 15th Amendment, and they did that in the 1965 Voting Rights Act. This is where they said, you know, those states and localities that have a historic pattern of discrimination, mostly in the old Confederacy, although not exclusively, but they had to get Department of Justice approval. It's called pre-clearance for any kinds of changes in their voting laws. And that marked a really crucial turning point. It was a spectacularly successful piece of legislation, the 65 Voting Rights Act.
Can you tell us about some of the Jim Crow laws? I know that we have some of us who may not have actually been born during that time.
Yeah, broadly speaking, and to take it outside the context of voting a little, you know, you had public accommodations were separate. You know, if you go back to the end of the 19th century, or the case of Plessy versus Ferguson, that was based on a law that said different races had to travel in different railway cars. You had segregated schools. Up until 1954, the Brown versus Board of Education decision, and even for 20 years after the Brown versus Board of Education decision, you had segregated schools, and you had those types of laws that I alluded to earlier. You know, you had poll taxes, literacy tests, and when I say literacy tests, mind you, I'm not talking about you know, simple sentences.
No.
I'm talking about tests that nobody could pass if you had a PhD, you know, and they were given to selected people, that sort of thing. You know, the obvious intent was to keep certain groups of people from voting, and it took the '65 Voting Rights Act to make that stop.
Lauren, knowing now that, of course, you have that right and hearing about what happened with the Jim Crow laws, what would you say is the most important thing about you individually as a voter, as far as your expectations of the process?
Well, just thinking, like you said, that this did happen in the not so distant past, so I could go to my grandparents and they would remember these things. It just makes me think about how important it is that I get to vote, and as I go to vote, I'll know to appreciate the process it took to get there.
So you have not voted yet. When will be the first time for you to vote?
Well, my birthday's in March, so it's coming up.
Okay, good for you. Now, Richard, you have already voted once,
Yes,
right?
I have once.
Okay. Any butterflies?
You know, not really. I had very, very adamantly watched the election and studied American politics then and beforehand. So I wasn't nervous about it. I knew my decision when I went there, and it was just a matter of executing on that decision.
You did your research, right, Professor?
I hope so.
Good answers.
I'm sure he did.
I'm sure you did. All right, Professor, let's get back to you. So after the Vietnam War, tell us about the trends in voting.
Well, of course, the 26th Amendment, which said no discrimination in voting based on age, as long as somebody is 18 or older, also a consequence of war. I mentioned the 15th Amendment was a consequence of the Civil War. The 26th Amendment, the women's right to vote, was a direct consequence of the First World War. And the 26th Amendment, 18-year-old right to vote, 1971, a direct consequence of the Vietnam War. And I think the reasons are obvious. You know, if 18, 19, 20-year-olds are being drafted, it seems a little incongruous that, well, we can send you, you know, to die in a war, but you can't come home and vote. So that amendment was not nearly as controversial as the 19th was. The tragedy, if that's not too strong a word, is that America is very low when compared to the rest of the world in terms of our voter participation. You know, this year, 2018, there won't be a presidential race on the ballot. It is striking to me that about 1/3 of the citizens that are eligible to vote can be bothered with it. And, you know, history tells us that that's what will happen. It's higher during a presidential election year, but even then it's relatively low, 50%, a little better than 50%.
Take us back to 1960, Kennedy versus Nixon.
1960 was an excruciatingly close race, as you say. Vice President Richard Nixon was the Republican nominee. Senator John Kennedy of Massachusetts was the Democratic nominee, and that race ended up, the two candidates were separated nationwide by just a few thousand votes. When you rounded their vote total, their percentages were exactly the same. If one vote per precinct across the country had changed from Kennedy to Nixon, Nixon would have won that race.
Let's talk about 2000. I know you're all too familiar with that.
2000, a lot of us will remember. Of course, that vote was not only excruciatingly close in the Electoral College, but the popular vote as well. And as I'm sure you recall, there was a split decision there.
Yes.
Al Gore very narrowly won the popular vote, but George Bush won the Electoral College and ended up 271 to 267 was the initial count, 271 to 266 because there was a faithless elector. People remember Florida, you know, in the millions of votes, and the hanging chads and all that, the paper ballots back then. And Florida, with the millions of votes counted, was of course, the decisive state. Really, every state that George Bush won was decisive. If he had lost any of them, he would not have been president. But with millions of votes cast, the final count had George W. Bush 537, not 537,000, 537
Right.
votes ahead of Al Gore. I mean, it's 269 votes had changed. Al Gore would have been president instead of George W. Bush. And it wasn't just Florida. I mean, George W. Bush won New Hampshire as well by only a few thousand votes. If he had lost that state, history would have been different.
So Richard,
Yes.
every vote makes a difference. Why do you think that's so important?
It's your chance to get out and make your opinion and your beliefs known. And it's your chance to get out and try to make a difference in the political climate of your country. And if you don't take advantage of that, I think you have very little room to really criticize your government because you've not done your part.
I see you shaking your head. Have you ever heard any conversations, maybe people your age saying, oh, I don't really know if I should exercise my right. Maybe I have a concert I need to attend. Why should they listen?
Well, you're right. So many friends of mine and people I know just don't really get excited about it. But as Richard said, it really is just so important, because if everybody is in the mindset that their vote doesn't matter, then nobody's going to vote. So we all need to remember that even though we're just one person, it truly is important to get out there and vote.
Absolutely. One person can definitely make a difference. Professor Mock, technological advancements, we're thinking back to 1960 to 2000 to the present.
Right.
Give us a little bit of an overview.
Well, of course, in 1960, you've got paper ballots. By and large, in 2000, you still have paper ballots. And of course, 2000 was a changing point in a lot of ways. A lot of those ballots were difficult to read. So Florida, at least, and I think the vast majority of states now rely on electronic voting rather than the paper ballots anymore. That has its own problems. There have been a couple of good articles in the Atlantic in the last couple of years.
And we'll definitely hear more about that from our upcoming guests on the show. I must say I've appreciated having all of you on the show today. I've learned quite a bit from you, Professor, from you two as well, Lauren and Richard. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, folks, the history of voting is quite expansive, as you have seen. In the next segment, we'll focus on what's on the horizon for 2018 by highlighting important statewide and local races. We'll also explore several frequently asked questions. Stay with us.
Unlock your newest member benefit. Over 1,000 episodes of your favorite PBS shows. American Masters, Antiques Roadshow, Nature, Nova, Masterpiece. Watch the best of PBS anytime, anywhere. Become a member, sign in, and start streaming today.
WSRE Public Television and the Escambia Elementary Principals Association congratulate these Shining Star Award recipients. These students were selected upon the basis of good citizenship and adherence to the core values adopted by the Escambia County School System: equality, responsibility, integrity, respect, honesty, and patriotism. Congratulations to all of these outstanding students. You are watching viewer-supported WSRE TV, a service of Pensacola State College.
We're back, and during this segment, it's an honor to have Paul Lux on set. He's the Okaloosa County Supervisor of Elections. Now, I'm sure you have a wealth of information to share with us this evening, but first, please explain what you do in your role as Supervisor of Elections.
Certainly. Well, Rameca, you can really boil what a Supervisor of Elections does down to three main things. The first thing being actually managing voter registration and everything that goes along with that. The second thing, and probably the most important thing we do, is actually we're responsible for the conduct of all elections here in Florida anyway, federal, state, and local. And then the third thing that we do, which a lot of people find very useful, particularly political science professors and their students sometimes, is we're responsible for maintaining all of the public records for all of the other activities that we do. So really, you can kind of distill everything down to just those three things.
All right, now with the good professor, we know that we ended on technological advancements. You have a lot that you can add to that, don't you, Paul?
Well, so where I would like to maybe segue into this segment is to talk about where Bush v. Gore took us from there.
Okay.
So during Bush v. Gore in 2000 in Florida, voters were voting on punch cards, as we all know, from the hanging chads, but they were also voting on lever machines. There were still counties that were hand counting paper ballots. And then there were other counties like mine who had already converted over to optical scan, where you're filling in the oval or connecting the front and back of an arrow. So we had a lot of different election systems. The way you recounted those systems was part of the problem in Bush v. Gore. And so where we ended up as a consequence of that, Florida passed its own 2001 Election Reform Act and said, everybody, you can either vote optical scan, and they approved the touch screens. Of course, we had a little problem in Florida with touch screens immediately thereafter in the 2002 elections, so much so that they finally came back and by 2004 had said, okay, by 2006, touch screens are only for voters with disabilities. Everybody else needs to vote on a paper ballot, specifically a marked sense ballot or an optical scan ballot. Which is where we are today. There's a deadline in the law so that all voting will be done by marked sense ballot by 2020. So voters, regardless of their ability or disability, will find themselves voting a paper ballot. So there are technological pieces of equipment that will take a piece of paper, use a touch screen as an interface device, but still produce a machine-readable paper ballot for the voters.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Let's talk about voter registration. There are some misconceptions, aren't there?
Oh, there are. And so one of the biggest things that we have to do, of course, is make sure you are registered before you try to go vote, because if you are not registered, you're not eligible to vote, even though you may meet all the other things.
So you mean to tell me somebody just can't show up and say, hey, I'm ready to vote? Just kidding, but we know.
Florida is not a same-day registration state. There are states that are. But in Florida, we stop allowing people to register 29 days before an election, regardless of what election it is. So 29 days, we call it in our vernacular the registration book closing. So you'll hear us refer to that. But 29 days before each election, that's when we stop allowing people to register. So even if you turn 18 inside of that 29 days, this is why anytime we're out doing voter registration in the high schools, at the college campuses, we encourage people who are not yet 18 to pre-register at 16 or 17 to give them an opportunity so that if that happens, if you do turn 18 in that 29-day period and you're pre-registered, you're already going to be on the voter rolls and ready to go when election day comes around. That happened actually to me the first time I voted. I was 17 when I received my ballot, but I turned 18 on election day. So for local elections, you really need to check with your supervisor of elections on their website or call their office for what local elections are coming up. And the reason I say that is because in Florida, we can at the county level and at the municipal level conduct elections at various times throughout the year. But of course, 2018 is a big general election year for everything. So our primary, which is on August 28th, the deadline to register there is July 30th.
So tell us the difference between a primary election and a general election.
Sure. So basically you have the primary election is a nominating election. This is where political parties choose who is going to represent them in the coming elections. And so as a consequence of that, Florida is what we still call a closed primary state. So both political parties in the legislature have decided that they want to keep it that way, at least currently. And so right now, if you are not registered as a Republican, you cannot vote in a Republican-only primary. If you're not registered as a Democrat, Democrat-only primary. And we do now allow minor party primaries. Last year, or I say last year, in 2016, we had the first ever primary for the Libertarian Party. Statewide, they had a candidate, they had two candidates in a race. So we are a closed primary state. There is an exception to that, though, and that's called the Universal Primary Contest. And this was done by constitutional amendment in 1997. they said that if only people from one party are running in a primary race and there's not going to be an opponent for the general election, then everyone should be allowed to vote in that primary election when that happens. And the example I like to use with students when I'm talking to them is, say 4 Republicans sign up to run for sheriff and no one else from any other party signs up to run. Then clearly whoever's going to win that primary is going to be the next sheriff. So when that happens, everybody gets the sheriff's race on their primary ballot, whether they're Republican, Democrat, no party, or whatever. And then everyone has a chance in that race to decide who the next sheriff will be. Otherwise, what you get in the general election is where the winners of the Republican minor party and Democratic Party primaries all show up on one ballot. Everyone gets pretty much the same ballot, and that's where the final choice is being made. But I always like to emphasize with the students when I'm registering them, anytime a final choice is made in Florida, whether you are voting in a primary or voting in a general election, you will always have a chance to vote when that final choice is made.
That's very good. What about write-in candidates?
So write-in candidates, and I'm glad you asked that because Florida has, anyone can get on the ballot as a write-in candidate. However, write-in candidates can only appear on a general election ballot. So you will never see write-in lines on a primary ballot, only in the general election ballot. But it does constitute general election opposition. And so people who run as write-ins pay no filing fees or qualifying fees of any kind. They do not have to collect any type of petition signatures to get their name on the ballot. And as a consequence of that, we do not print their name on the ballot. A blank line is merely provided for people to write somebody's name in there if they choose to run as a write-in candidate. So we have had write-in candidates from local level races at the county level all the way up to, of course, we always see those lines for president and governor.
We sure do.
So write-ins are a very common thing, unlike what just happened in Alabama, where they have a wide open, you can write in anybody. In Florida, we only tally votes for actual legitimate write-in candidates. They still have to file the paperwork to run as a write-in candidate.
Let's talk about some of the important races coming up in 2018.
Well, they're all important.
Yes, they are.
And you will never hear me say anything other than the closer the government is to you, the voter, the more important it is. So vote in the local races every bit as important as voting for president or governor. But talk about federal offices first. U.S. Senate and U.S. House of Representatives District 1, which covers all of us here today, Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, actually all the way over into Walton and part of Holmes County is Congressional District 1. Those races will be on our ballot coming up this year. We will also have, at the state level, of course, it's time for the governor's race.
Sure is.
So we have governor and lieutenant governor who run as a pair together. You don't elect them separately here. Attorney General, Chief Financial Officer, and then the Commissioner of Agriculture. You're going to have some multi-county or multi-jurisdictional races. So we have all of the even-numbered Florida Senate races are up this year, and then all of the Florida House of Representatives seats are up this year. So be on the lookout for them.
Absolutely.
And then now let's get down to you will also see in the general election what we call judicial merit retention races. So judges at the Supreme Court level and the District Court of Appeals level are appointed, not elected. As a consequence of that, once every 6 years, we are given the opportunity as voters to say, do we want to keep this judge or don't we want to keep this judge? It's one of the hardest things for people when one of the students talked about doing his homework. It's one of the hardest questions that we have to answer is where do you find out this information about these judges, because it's really, really hard. We will have some circuit and county judge races if they're contested on our ballots locally. And then down to the county level races, we have county commissioners, we have school board members that are always going to get elected this time around. So all things to be on the lookout for. Now let's talk about amendments.
Yes, please do.
Amendments, again, usually only show up on general election ballots, although that's not exclusive, but typically it does. But this time around, we have already got 2 constitutional amendments that are put there by the legislature that are already waiting for us. We have 2 citizens initiatives that are likely to make ballot position before the deadline coming up. And then, of course, meeting this year and part of last year, the Constitutional Revision Commission. They meet once every 20 years to review people's suggested changes to the Constitution, and then they decide what questions to put on the ballot. The last time the Constitutional Revision commission met, they gave us 11 constitutional amendments for the ballot in 1998. So be on the lookout for those. They're probably going to be, depending on how much other stuff is on the ballot, you typically find the constitutional amendments on the back side. When you do find it on the back side, there is a note at the bottom of the ballot that says turn it over and vote the other side. So
all right,
no
so always
excuses,
look on the other
no
side,
excuses
right?
for missing what's on the back.
What about frequently requested information?
So I mentioned that we are the keepers of the public records information for both the elections and everything else. And of course, one of the biggest questions that we get as it relates to the voter registration is how are people registered?
Okay.
Republicans, Democrats, people with no party affiliation, etc. The best place to find that is on the main page of your Supervisor of Elections website. Some of us have a ticker that is updated about every 5 minutes. Some of us have tickers that are updated every day. But typically speaking, just looking around the area right here, we have Escambia right now has a slight edge to Republicans, about 45% to 35%, with the other 20% being made up of people with no party affiliation. In both Santa Rosa and Okaloosa County, we are almost 3-to-1 Republicans to Democrats. As a curious note, in both of our counties, there are more people registered with no party affiliation or minor party affiliation than there are registered as Democrats in Santa Rosa and Okaloosa counties. One of the other things that we get asked for a lot is information on campaign finance documentation. So when people run for office, they raise money, they spend money, and under Florida law, you have to account for every penny that you collect and spend.
So important.
And so for the people for whom we are the filing officers, we keep all of that information. Most of us, you can get it right on our website. You can search by candidate, you can search by race. You can find all of that information out there on our websites. And so right down to who's given who money and what did they actually spend it on, you can find all that information on our website.
Are there any deadlines for that documentation?
Well, so it depends on what race you're running in and how soon you file, but a candidate typically must file at least once a month from the time they pre-file, which is a term we use that means they filed some of the paperwork to run for office. It allows them to start collecting and spending money. So from the time they do that, they're required to file those papers with us once a month. And then as you get closer to the election, from the time candidate qualifying occurs, you will find that there is, then they start reporting every 2 weeks. Then they start reporting weekly as you get even closer to the primary election. And if you're running for a statewide office like governor or one of the big cabinet positions, those folks get down to the wire and they actually are filing reports every single day. Those you got to get through the state website, not your local supervisor.
Now, can you hang tight for a moment with us for the next segment?
Absolutely.
Sounds good? All right, now, Paul is just getting started during this segment. We'll see him again after the break to find out more about the voting process, candidates, or other particulars in Okaloosa County. You can visit the website, www.govote-okaloosa.com. You're watching inStudio on WSRE. Hello, everyone. During this segment, we're thrilled to welcome back Paul Lux, Okaloosa County Supervisor of Elections. He's joined by Tappie Villane, Santa Rosa County Supervisor of Elections, and Sonya Daniel with the Escambia County Supervisor of Elections office. We also have J.D. Gaither, an election worker from Santa Rosa County. Now, little birdie told me that you all are no strangers. Am I right?
True, you are right.
Okay. So, Sonya, let's start with you, Escambia County. Some important things that we need to know.
Well, certainly, as Paul mentioned in the earlier segment, this is an election year, and he did a great job going through the contests up for election. And for us, the local races that'll be on the ballot, of course, is County Commission, School Board, but then we have some special district races, the Emerald Coast Utilities Authority, Santa Rosa Island Authority, Escambia Soil and Water Conservation Board, 2 races in City of Pensacola, both the mayor's race and some city council races. And the town of Century has some races. Now, for us, our municipal elections are on our regular primary and general election ballot. So folks will be seeing those in both August and in November.
So let's talk about potential candidates for some of these races. Do you ever have a shortage of candidates for races? What if someone's out there considering running, right? And they have some butterflies. Should I do it? Should I not do it? They should, right?
Absolutely, and we actually, one of the things we do in the fall prior to the start of our election cycle, we do a candidate workshop for anyone that's interested in running for office, where we go through all the ins and outs and the do's and don'ts for running for office. And we also put all that information on our website, so they can go back and look at those presentations. We have a local candidate handbook that we put up there that tells them how many petitions they need to get, what the salary is, what the term of office. So there's a lot of information at their disposal. In the time that I've been with the elections office, we haven't run short of candidates
That's
at any
good
race.
to hear.
But I'm sure it's a little tricky, and both Paul and Tappie can speak to what it's like to run for office, since they actually have been in that position.
So, Tappie, let me step into your world. What's happening in Santa Rosa County?
Well, very similar to Escambia and Okaloosa as well. We also will have the County Commission and School Board districts on our ballot, and also some special districts, Blackwater Soil and Water, and then the Avalon Beach, Holly Navarre, and Midway Fire District will also be races on the ballot. Just like Escambia County, we also have our cities, our local municipalities, they appear on our primary and general ballot as well.
Let's talk about election workers specifically. How are they recruited, and specifications for anyone who would like to pursue that?
Well, we're very fortunate in Santa Rosa. We work with about 300 election workers in any given election cycle. A lot of our recruitment is done word of mouth. I have been at the office since 2005, so we have a lot of people who work and they tell their friends or their neighbors or their family members. So that's kind of how we recruit. Again, we work with about 300 election workers depending on the election cycle. We could not do what we do in our office without these folks. We are so fortunate to have the people that we have working with us. They do a great job, they're dedicated, and they take pride in what they do.
So are they vetted, background checks, things
We
of that
do,
nature?
yes, they have to be a registered voter, and obviously a background check, and so we make sure that they are trained and checked
Ready
out and good to go.
JD, I see you smiling over there. It's illuminating the entire set.
Absolutely.
So I know that you're an election worker in Santa Rosa County. You know Tappie very well. Tell me about your experience. What piqued your interest initially?
Well, basically, being a veteran of this great country, you need to pay back, because there are people who died that caused us to have this right to vote. And that's the way I looked at it, is to be able to, while I can, while I'm healthy, to come and pay back for those who gave the full measure for my right to vote. And I enjoy it. And I heard someone say that not volunteers, they're paid a little bit. And that's true. We are, they give us a few shekels. But
I like that.
But I would, personally, I would pay them to allow me to do this if it come down to it.
That is
I
wonderful.
honestly would. And the money is, what is it the teachers say, if you're in it for the money, you're in the wrong profession. I do it because I want to be there. I want to do what they asked me to do, what they've trained me to do. As she said, there's 300 of us, and we kindly are in groups. I work at the same poll every year, early voting every year. We deliver gear to the various polls, and you work with the same people. And it's just, can't hardly wait till it's time to do it again.
How long would a shift be for you?
Well, various. When I deliver gear, it's like 4 hours. That's on the day before the election to the various polls that we deliver to, both around Pace and Milton or over in Gulf Breeze. And on election day, it goes from like about 5:30 in the
I would
morning,
imagine.
5:30 in the morning until about 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock, depending on what election it is. It's a long day, but that's, you just deal with it. You know it's going to be a long day, so you're there. You bring food, and you're with the people you want to be with, and you switch around. We at my particular poll, we train everybody in every position.
That's good.
We switch it about so they all know kind of how to do what's to be done.
So I'm curious, which branch of the military you're prepared for those long, rigorous hours?
I'm a retired United States Navy.
My dad as well. Okay, good. He was a new on the sub.
We couldn't all be in the Navy.
Okay, Paul, let's get back to you. Oftentimes there are myths, right?
Oh boy.
Let's talk about that.
Well, so let me hit three if I can, if we have
Sure.
time.
Go ahead.
The first one, the first myth we hear a lot of is voters cannot wear political or promotional apparel to polling places, and that is patently false. Voters can wear whatever they would like to wear when they go vote: candidate t-shirts, hats, buttons, pins, badges. Poll workers, not allowed to wear those things. People who are there representing parties as poll watchers, also not allowed to wear those things. But voters themselves can wear anything they want. So you see that email chain running around that says, don't wear your insert candidate name here shirt because they won't let you in to vote. Absolutely not true.
Interesting.
The one that irritates me the most as an Army veteran and for any veteran is that absentee ballots are only counted if the election is close. Categorically untrue. In fact, and I suspect Tappie and David's office are the same, when it comes to reading election results on election night, one of the first results we read out are the absentee ballots we've tabulated up to that point.
Good.
So yes, absolutely, the vote by mail ballots are tabulated, they are counted. The last one I want to touch on is if the address on your driver's license is incorrect, you're not going to be allowed to use it as a form of ID. Now, Florida does require that you show photo and signature ID. Your driver's license is perfect because it has both your photo and your signature on it. But that's really all our poll workers are looking at when they look at that driver's license. They're looking to match your picture, and they're looking when you sign to make sure your signature matches, and that's it. The address that's on there has absolutely no bearing on whether you can use that as a valid form of ID. We do accept 12 different forms of photo and signature ID. I know you can find it on every one of our websites, what the valid forms of identification are. But whether you vote early in person or whether you vote at the polls on election day in person, be prepared. Bring one of those photo and signature IDs with you.
Paul, let's talk about the candidate university, all right?
Okay.
We know that you had to run for your office. Let's tell us about that.
Well, so candidate university is what we call our candidate class, and we run it about twice a year. It's a 3-hour non-accredited class, so although I use the term university, we use that a little loosely. But one of the fairest criticisms when I originally ran for office was that our office, they didn't feel was doing enough to prepare candidates. And so I took what was normally about a 40-minute briefing and I crammed it into 3 hours. And at the end of the 3 hours, guess what? Everyone wishes we had another hour to keep talking about stuff. There's so much detail in the campaign finance laws that you really need to be made aware of. And so we have seen an increase in people running for office and a decrease in the mistakes that they are making as a result of attending candidate university.
So Sonya, let's talk about poll managers for just a moment. I know that you have a lot of experience with that, speaking of mistakes and alleviating that per se, right? Can you give us some advice regarding that, things that you do as a precaution
Well, we do a lot of training, and that's one of the things in the time that I've been with David's office is we've really revamped the election worker training, and we've gone to more of a hands-on approach. And also with the technology using electronic poll books and now express votes, we really feel like the workers need to touch that and really get to know that equipment, to know the process and to know what to do. So we spend a lot more hands-on time, a lot more classroom time. Now, I won't say labor intensive, but it is from a staff standpoint. We spend about 6 weeks to train 600 poll workers in Escambia County and get them ready for election day. And if they're just a little rusty or feel like they need some more practice after having spent 5 or 6 hours with us, we have lab hours that then they can come and get some more one-on-one attention, or maybe just sit and practice. How do I set it up? How do I tear it down? How do I swipe a driver's license? How do I do a manual lookup? To really get them familiar with the process. So we spend a lot of time on that because we think that that's where we need to. We're entrusting an election to these 600 people out in the field on election day, and we need them to make sure they're following all the laws and making sure everything runs properly.
And I see that bright smile once again, JD,
Absolutely.
shaking your head in agreement.
Absolutely. She's telling you the truth. It is. And we train here at Santa Rosa the same way. Before every election, we're right up there, right in the auditorium, going through the numbers to make sure that everybody knows how to do what they're there to do. And if you need more practice, they'll give it to you. But if you show them, look, I can do this. I'm familiar with this. You're good to go.
So let's talk about voting in particular. I remember when I was a young girl living in Hawaii, my dad was stationed in Honolulu, by the way, Navy man. My mom bought me a little dress that said vote. And from an early age, I had that inkling, that desire. I knew I couldn't do it at that time. But Tappie, your perspective, tell us about that when you first voted. First time voting.
Oh my gosh. Well, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, so that's where I voted the first time. And then my family moved here, I guess probably after the first time I voted, then the second time I would have voted here in Florida. But yeah, it's something, you take pride in doing and make sure that each and every election that, you do research and make sure that you go and cast that vote.
JD, did you ever use the absentee ballot system?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Many times while I was in the military and since I've been out, absolutely use that absentee ballot. And I agree with what he said before. A lot of people thought, oh, they don't count. They're not going to count. Why should I use it unless there's something? But that's not true. Absentee ballot's just as good as the one you go down and do.
Definitely among friends here this evening. It's been such a pleasure. I've learned a lot from everyone. Good professor and his students as well. Want to thank all of you so much for joining us. So in addition to that, I'd also like to thank our guests again for joining us this evening. So to find out more about the voting process, candidates, and other essentials, you can visit the following websites. For Okaloosa County, go to www.govote-okaloosa.com. If you live in Escambia County, visit www.escambiavotes.com. And Santa Rosa County residents can log on to www.votesantarosa.com. I'm Rameca Vincent Leary. Have a good evening, and remember to keep it locked in right here on WSRE, PBS for the Gulf Coast.